Hello, the Chocology Chocolatier School is today with you. In this video, we will demonstrate the work of our special chocolate calculators that will help you to invent your own recipes and calculate the cost of chocolate production using these recipes. Here, you can find a calculator for dark, milk and white chocolate. They are on our website chocology.pro. You can find them in the menu by clicking on the Tools button. Here they are. Now we will review all of them. Let's start with the dark chocolate. The calculator consists of three main blocks. In this part, we can enter the cost of the ingredients that are used for chocolate making. Now, we set the characteristics of chocolate that we need. And here, we see the results of the calculations. The cost of 1 kilogram of chocolate and the cost of the entire chocolate batch. By the way, we can specify how much chocolate we would like to produce. In this case, we will produce 25 kilograms. So let's get started. To begin with, we set up the cost of our ingredients if we already know them. Input: liquor 12, cacao butter 30. For sugar, I put 35 eurocent per kilogram. I will leave the emulsifier as 20 and 8 per kilogram. Vanilla is 420 per kilogram and cacao powder is 4 per kilogram. Next, let's go to our characteristics. The first parameter is cacao, the content of cacao products in our chocolate. It includes cacao liquor or cacao nibs, and also cacao butter. So, for example, I will indicate 75%. The next parameter is the content of oil in cacao liquor. The exact information is usually indicated by the manufacturer on the package or in specification. The next parameter is the content of fat in the chocolate. The content of fat in dark chocolate is the content of cacao butter in the recipe. I'll put 37%, although I can put even less, for example 25%. But it's impossible to put it lower because chocolate will no longer have its necessary hardness, and it will be very hard to grind such chocolate in the melanger. You can put more if you need to prepare chocolate for the chocolate fontaines. But we will fix it at 37%. Further, it comes the emulsifier. Such emulsifiers as soy lecithin or sunflower lecithin are used to influence the rheology of chocolate. That is, by adding an emulsifier, we make the chocolate more fluid. There are also restrictions. We cannot put more than 0.7%. This is due to the fact that if we put more, we will make the chocolate not fluid, but only thicker than it was before adding the emulsifier. Therefore, I will leave a maximum of 0.7%. It will be quite convenient and comfortable for me to work with such chocolate. The next parameter is vanilla. We can enrich the taste of our chocolate with vanilla or mask off cacao if its taste characteristics are suddenly not outstanding. It could be up to 3%. If it is more, it makes no sense. Well, in our case, I will not include it in the recipe at all. Further, it comes the content of fat in cacao powder. If cacao powder is included in the recipe, then I must indicate the content of fat in the powder, which I have. For example, 12 or 6%. Let's make it 12. And the last parameter is the proportion of cacao liquor to the cacao powder. Further, I turn the slider to the right side. More cacao liquor will be used in the recipe. Accordingly, there will be less cacao powder. If I move it at maximum to the left side, respectively, there will be more cacao powder and less cacao liquor. You can see it clearly in the calculation table of our recipe. Also, a very interesting point is how the cost is changing per kilogram of our chocolate. Look, I can't put this indicator to 100%. So that only cacao liquor is used in the chocolate recipe. This is due to the fact that our parameters, which we have indicated, the content of cacao products in the recipe, the content of butter in the cacao liquor, total fat content, don't allow us not to use cacao powder in the recipe. So it's not a calculator's mistake. It's not some wrong data you indicated. It's simply impossible to do otherwise. If suddenly we don't want to use cacao powder, we can try to reduce either the fat content of the chocolate and see how this affects the calculation of our chocolate, or to reduce the content of cacao products in the recipe. For example, put 69 and look how it changes. Yes, now we have the opportunity to use only cacao liquor without the use of cacao powder. That's all for the dark chocolate. By the way, the calculation goes for 25 kilograms. Our chocolate will cost 274 euros. Pretty good. Here we also indicate the cost of our ingredients. We use liquor 12, cacao butter 30, milk powder 26 and 5. I will also change sugar to 0.35, emulsifier 20 and 8, vanilla 420. I leave cacao powder 4 euros per kilogram, and one more ingredient is DMF. DMF is dehydrous milk fat. Imagine that it is butter in which there is not a drop of water. It is 100% milk fat. 4 euros per kilogram. We put again 25 kilograms of chocolate, batch volume. And now proceed to the parameters of our chocolate. The first one is again the content of cacao products in the recipe. It includes cacao nibs or liquor and cacao butter. Let's assume it is 32.5%. Next comes the content of fat in chocolate from cacao butter. Pay attention, I can't put it above 28 and 5. It means the difference between cacao products and the content of cacao butter is not less than 4%. This is due to the fact that we made sure in advance that there were no less than 4% of cacao fibers in milk chocolate. And cacao fibers, as we know, are responsible for the color and chocolate taste in our recipe. Respectively, if there are less than 3% of them, the taste of chocolate will be too pale and very poor. 4% will be the minimum, we can put more. Thereby, we can simply reduce the fat content of chocolate, cacao, butter, and free up space for cacao fibers. That is to say, the difference between 27% and 32.5 will be already 5.5. In other words, 5.5% is cacao fibers, which give color and chocolate flavor. I'll put it back to 28 and 5. The total fat content of chocolate is the content of both cacao butter in the recipe and milk fat. So, as you can see, we can't put it above a certain amount. The difference cannot be more than 9% between the total fat and the cacao butter fat. It is done on purpose, so that you can't make the calculations for your chocolate, so that there will be a lot of milk fat, due to which, for example, will cause a bar of chocolate to be very sluggish and flexible. It is not typical for chocolate. It must be brittle and crunching when you break it. Therefore, 9% of milk fat will be the maximum for chocolate. You can do less by reducing the overall content of fat in chocolate. Again, we cannot make less than a certain amount, less than 4%. This is done on purpose, so that milk chocolate will be delicious. It has to be milky and should contain dairy products. I will establish, for example, 36 and 5%. Further, the butter content in cacao liquor is 52%. The content of fat in dry milk powder, which I have, for example, is 14%. The content of fat in the cacao powder that I used is 6%. I won't use vanilla. The emulsifier will again be at maximum of 0.7. Again, the proportion of cacao powder, I will try to put it to the maximum. That is to say, our parameters allow us not to use cacao powder in our recipe. I can use it. Thereby, I move a little to the left, for example at 60%. So liquor, I will have 60%. The remaining 40% will be cacao powder in the chocolate. And the last parameter is the proportion of milk powder to DMF. Again, the more I turn the slider to the right, the more milk powder will be used and less milk fat. I can't get it to the maximum because the parameter doesn't allow me to do this. Everything is designed so that our recipe contains all the parameters that we previously set. You can use more milk powder, less milk fat, or vice versa, less milk powder and more milk fat. Please note that if we put the amount of milk powder to the maximum, then there will be 30% of sugar. In case you think that it is not enough, you can simply reduce the milk powder content, thereby making space for sugar. But then, again, our parameters that we previously set, they're all saved. As a result, with these parameters, you will get a very tasty, good milk chocolate with a very attractive price. It will cost 17.7 euros per kilogram, and the cost of 25 kilograms will already be 443.3. We also indicate the cost of the ingredients. The first parameter is the total fat content of the chocolate. This is again the content of both cacao butter and milk fat in the recipe. As an example, we will set 37%. The fat content of chocolate in cacao butter, I can indicate its minimum 25%, but also the total fat content is immediately regulated. If I initially set 38% of fat, by decreasing the content of cacao butter, the total fat content also automatically decreases because milk fat in the recipe cannot be 10% in white chocolate. Otherwise, the bar will be flexible and sluggish like plasticine. In white chocolate, only cacao butter is responsible for cacao products. Let's indicate 29%. And let's set the fat content at 37% respectively. The difference between the total fat and the fat content from cacao butter here will be 8%. These 8% will be milk fat. The fat content of milk powder I leave at 26%. Vanilla can be 1.5% in the recipe. Emulsifier will be set to the maximum for convenience. And also the proportion of milk powder to dehydrated milk fat. With our parameters, I can fully use milk powder in relation to milk fat. We immediately notice how much sugar we have left. In case you want more in the recipe, then we are reducing the proportion of dry milk powder to milk fat. Accordingly, we now include milk fat in the recipe, not sugar is being added. You should also know that in milk powder contains lactose, and lactose is milk sugar. Respectively, in white chocolate as well as in the milk chocolate, not only sugar is responsible for the sweetness, but also lactose, which is contained in the dry milk powder. It is very important to know if you want to understand the final sweetness of our chocolate. The volume of the batch will be 25 kilograms. Well, with our parameters for the white chocolate, we get the cost per kilogram 23.4. And for 25 kilograms, we get 585.8 euros. These are our very convenient 3 calculators for calculating your chocolate recipes. I hope that they help you quickly and accurately calculate your recipes. Goodbye!